In a speech to mark the opening of a new housing service for young adults in Kildare, President Michael D Higgins slammed the government's housing policy, stating that the issue was Ireland's great failure.
I have taken as well to speaking ever more frankly in relation to housing, because I think it is our great failure. It isn't a crisis anymore. It is a disaster. Building homes is what is important. It is not to be a star performer for the speculative sector internationally or anything else. It is a powerful word. Home. Home. Home is about the outpouring of intimacies and emotions. Sometimes it is only a very simple thing, but it is where personalities developed, where relationships with others are developed. It is a place to come back to, a place to depart from. And my wish as President is, let all the county managers and the directors of services all over the country have a good long look at what is happening in Wicklow and Kildare and ask themselves the question before their next monthly meeting, why aren't we doing something similar? What is stopping us?
Michael D Higgins speaking earlier today. John, it's partially critical of the housing crisis, the housing disaster, and harshly critical of government policy. What did you make of it?
It was a nakedly political speech, which that is not a pejorative description of it. It was an incredible speech. I went back through... I phoned his press representative and asked for a script of the speech, and he wryly said, I'll send you over the script, but I'll have to send you the audio as well, because he didn't quite stick to it. So if you watch him there, he's not looking at it. So if the government had ever wanted to, say, screen the speeches of our president, they won't be able to do them. And it was incredible. And it's well worth, if anyone can find it online, of going through the whole thing, because in the lead up to those striking words where he condemns government housing policy as a complete failure, as a disaster, he says that, we formed a republic to get away from the poor laws, the British poor laws, and what we have now more resembles those. And he then goes on to paint a stark picture of the Irish streetscape, where one will walk down a street, he says, and see nothing but derelict buildings. You go into half-empty villages around rural Ireland. They're empty because the banks have decided to leave, taking everything with them, having made their profits. It's a stark excoriation of government policy across the board. And if one looks back, he left the Oireachtas as a TD in 2011, so he is pretty much taking apart Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil's performance in the area of housing since 2011. And let's not forget, Fianna Fáil supported Fine Gael's housing policy from 2016, so it's difficult for them to say this was an historic speech. And it is, I think it's a politically difficult situation now, because if the Taoiseach or anybody else tries to defend their housing policy, it will be thrown back at them that the most popular politician in the country, who got an extraordinary mandate back in 2018, has called their housing policy a disaster.
Do you think he has captured the desperation, the anger and the emotion that people feel about the housing situation?
Of course he has. He's a uniquely gifted politician in understanding what people want to hear. And again, I go back to the mandate he gained in 2018. He is... if you look at the history of his career, he somehow, and I don't mean this again too closely, he somehow resembles politicians like Donald Trump and Boris Johnson, in that he was something of a TV star before he really made it as a
I don't know if he'd enjoy that comparison,
I'd say that he was very popular on television, that people knew Michael D as a commentator and a personality, maybe before they knew him as a frontline politician, and certainly before he became president. He's a national treasure in many ways.
They have a certain affection towards him and towards this statement too, you'd imagine.
But he has not wandered into this politically dangerous area for himself. He could technically be upbraided by the government for going off on the tangent that he has today and going off into the area he has today. But he is clearly confident in his own popularity and his own position in Irish national life, that he can turn around as a president who traditionally, the position, did not comment on current political affairs. He has moved on, he's developed the presidency and has made it into a different dynamic, that position.
Niamh, will you berate him?
I mean, listen to, and I didn't get to hear the full speech today, Ciara, but I mean, listen to the snippets that I have heard and what I heard in the news this evening. I mean, you couldn't disagree with anything that the President is saying, and you do feel his passion. I mean, we all feel like that, even as public representatives, I think, across the House. We all want to see people having a roof over their home. We all see that as a basic human right, to have that security and to know that you will have a roof over your home.
That's not just what he was saying.
I know,
he was
I
saying
appreciate
the outlook
that.
is darker, and he said the star performer here is the speculative sector internationally, and that is a direct criticism of your party's policies.
OK, I hear what you're saying, Ciara. I also have to say that Darragh O'Brien, as Minister for Housing, is in the job not 2 years, OK? And I know that what John is saying, the President's been critical of not just Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, but the truth is this Minister has been in situ for 18 months. He has a Housing for All plan in place. He has money behind it. I think it's $4 billion in terms of the investment is there. He has a suite of measures in place to deliver.
But I suppose Fianna Fáil have supported Fine Gael for
at
years
that time,
now, so they have to take responsibility for the housing policies then too that they supported. At that time, we wanted to see a government in place. I don't deny that for 1 second. But the truth is, and we have to be honest with ourselves, he is not even 2 years in the job. He's a Housing for All policy. He has money behind it. So you don't disagree then with what the President's saying?
Of course. I mean, if I walk down the main street of Baleaborough, I see banks have left the street. I see empty buildings. It's heartbreaking.
And you agree that policies to date have left the housing situation to speculation from international investors?
There is no denying that at all, Ciara. But Fianna Fáil and government, and in particular the Minister for Housing, is trying to reverse that, along with his cabinet colleagues who are looking at town centre policies first. They're trying to find different ways of reinventing and reconfiguring main streets, and we have to look at the integrity of our main streets because it goes beyond that. It does go beyond that in the sense that it looks at local authorities, what planning policy has been to that, and it incorporates all of that. It's not just one problem.
Pádraig, do you accept Darragh O'Brien has had 2 years in the job and there is a Housing for All policy and they have, the intentions and the money you're saying and the plan to fix this?
I think that Michael D Higgins showed himself to be more in touch with the people than, unfortunately, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael led governments. It is a disaster that we're facing. We're talking now, and in our home county of Donegal, people had to emigrate because they didn't have work. Now they emigrate because they can't afford to live in this country. They can't afford to put a roof over their head. And that is because we failed to build public housing for over a decade. We pushed everybody into the private rental sector. There's people who made a lot of profit from this, and we stopped building public housing. Total disaster. We now have a situation where even in places like Donegal, my home county, you cannot get a home to rent. Never mind be able to afford a roof over your head. This is directly because of government policy. Michael D Higgins went off script today. He spoke from the heart and he spoke for the Irish people in every word he said today.